Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Imagine, you live in a happy marriage, but over time, small cracks begin to appear, which imperceptibly turn into huge chasms. Your mother's authority, growing mistrust, and painful suspicions all lead to the fact that one day you decide to take a desperate step, installing a hidden camera in your own bedroom. And lo and behold, you click play and see something that will change your life forever. It's a story of love, betrayal, and an unexpected denouement that will be the starting point for a new chapter of life. My marriage was a real mistake. In fact, it was the worst mistake of my life. The main problem wasn't my wife. She was normal in many ways. My problem was her mother, a real dragon who hated me more than anything in the world and never missed an opportunity to show her anger. Of course, I wasn't a real nice guy, far from it, but I wasn't a real bad guy either. Every person has good and bad sides. Nobody is perfect. I've never pretended to be a saint, and to be honest, I've been involved in a few less than honest things. However, I've never been to jail for anything, though one day it was very close. My friend Nicholas, who was in law school at the time, saved me. Nicholas and I have been friends since school. He was a small guy with thick glasses and always preferred to read books rather than join the rest of the boys who teased the girls. When a couple of boys at school chose him as a victim of their bullying, I felt sorry for him and told everyone that I would beat up anyone who dared to offend Nicholas. 2 guys did it, and I kept my word. Today, as I start writing this story, I am 32 years old. I am a self-employed well driller, which means I drill holes about 100 meters deep for heating pipes and make good money from it. I have been married to Lisette for almost 6 years, and we have a son who was born just 5 months after our wedding. We have a nice house in a small Scandinavian town and could be your average family, but we are not because of her mother, the dragon, who hates me so much for getting her daughter pregnant while she had a boyfriend chosen by her mother. I must say that I have lost many battles, but I hope to win in the last round. This whole mess started on the eve of the summer solstice 6 years ago. The summer solstice is the shortest night of the year and has been celebrated as a sacred night here in Scandinavia since ancient times when the Vikings ruled the land. It's a romantic night with the midnight sun in the north and just a few hours of soft twilight in the south, with wild parties everywhere. At that time, I was engaged to a beautiful girl named La, and we planned to move in together on August 1st when I was promised a 3-room apartment to replace the 2-room one I had at that time. But La and I had a fight because she was going to her cousin's wedding on Midsummer's Eve, and I wasn't invited along, which was a serious breach of etiquette since engaged couples are treated as equals to married ones and should always be invited together. I was sure that no other engaged couple was invited individually. La also realized that this was a humiliation for me because of my old reputation as a bad boy. I have never done anything wrong to my girlfriend or her cousin, whom I had never even met. La agreed that I was right but refused to choose me for this wonderful evening and didn't want to stay at home instead of going to the wedding. If the wedding had been on any other weekend, I would have been happy to stay home. Even if I had been invited, I would have done my best to find an excuse not to go. I didn't blame my cousin. It was her right to choose the guests and exclude people she didn't like. I blamed La for accepting such a humiliating invitation on the summer solstice, the most important day of the year. We quarreled, and when she left my apartment in a huff on Midsummer's Eve morning, our engagement was called off. I told her that if her damn cousin was more important than her boyfriend, then let her stay there forever because I didn't want her back. After an hour, I regretted losing her and called her several times throughout the day, but her phone was off. La and I were also invited to a big party at a friend's cottage. I went there alone and had a good time as a new bachelor. At the party, I danced a few times with a rather nice girl, Lisette, who was there with her cowardly fiancé, who had a hard time with alcohol. I didn't know her well at the time, but I found her quite attractive. When her boyfriend got too drunk, I offered to help her get him into the back seat of his car. Lisette and I returned to the party for a while and then went for a romantic walk to a nearby lake. I think she was impressed by my old and incorrect reputation as a bad guy. There's usually no explanation for why beautiful women are attracted to bad guys. Obviously, this has always been the case because there is an old saying, naughty boys sleep with beautiful girls. Neither of us were very drunk, and she never accused me of using any tricks to get her into bed. We were together that night, and then her boyfriend found us sleeping together. My ex-girlfriend's boyfriend threw his wedding ring at her, which obviously meant he was leaving her on the spot. When my now ex-girlfriend-in-law returned from her wedding, she called me and told me she regretted the whole trip. I was right in saying that she was the only invitee without her significant other, which humiliated her and ruined the wedding. She tried to call me several times on Midsummer's Eve to ask for forgiveness, which I saw later when I checked my inbox on my mobile phone. She begged me to meet her and talk about our situation, which I agreed to. However, when she called me again an hour after finding out about my encounter with Lysette, she was beside herself and screamed that she was glad our engagement was over. It didn't bother me at first, but I called her several times after about 2 weeks when I expected her to calm down. Each time, I received the same response and an offer to go to hell. I also called Lysette several times, but she refused to meet with me. I had almost forgotten about her when she rang my doorbell 2 months later, looking worried and wanting to talk. I asked her to come in, and she got straight to the point. "I'm pregnant, and you're the father." Then she began to cry. We talked for several hours, and she told me that I was the first and only man she had ever been with. She intended to keep the child and asked if I was man enough to share the consequences of what we had done. What could I say? Even I realized that it was best for the child to have both parents, so I agreed to give our relationship a chance. Lysette was a beautiful, sweet, and calm girl with a reputation as a family-oriented person. She wasn't as sweet as La, but she was still a good choice for a wife. We decided to get married as soon as possible. Of course, love is an important part of marriage, and neither of us could deny that there was some love between us. On that sacred night, we both believed that this feeling would grow stronger once we had a child. Lysette spent the night with me and told me she was very happy with my decision and intended to make the best of it. The next day, we went to her parents' house together to tell them the news. This was both the first and last time I visited her parents' home. Her mother turned my visit into a real fuss. Instead of trying to take advantage of the situation, she started yelling at me, calling me a bully who had dishonored her innocent daughter. She threatened to sue me and promised to punish me in every possible way. Her father was apparently a poor weakling who let the dragon spew her fire without saying a word about it. Not the best in-laws in town. Lysette's parents were the second generation of owners of a family printing business. Their business was once the leading printing establishment in the region but had declined due to stiff competition from new printing capacities at low prices in new countries like Poland and Hungary, which were close to EU membership and already doing business with the old members. Lysette's family made good profits in the past but did not invest in the latest equipment, losing customers and causing their income to drop. At the time, I was unemployed, and Lysette's mother, seeing a chance to control me, demanded that I start working in the printing shop for lousy pay. I refused and chose to live on unemployment insurance, which provided me with more money than the job offer. Since I had unlimited free time, I even worked a well-paying side hustle as a driller. Lysette's mother began her vendetta by complaining to the unemployment fund that I had refused to accept a job offer, which was against the rules. She had nothing to prove this, so she then asked a lawyer to draw up a prenuptial agreement in which I had no rights to anything if things went badly between me and Lysette, which was exactly what her mother wanted. I asked Nicholas to rewrite the agreement to be more fair, and Lysette signed it without telling her mother. 2 months later, Lysette and I got married at the town hall. It was a simple ceremony with only 2 witnesses, Nicholas and Lysette's best friend. 5 months later, we had a wonderful boy. Our relationship gradually developed into something that could be called true love, and the next 2.5 years were the happiest, even very happy, of our marriage. A few months after our wedding, I had the opportunity to buy a rock drilling business on fair terms. The owner signed up for a beginner's square dance course and met a wonderful woman there. She was a doctor with only a temporary job at a local hospital. When she was offered a very well-paid position in northern Norway, she made an offer to a driller, who accepted and sold him his business. Since both the doctor and the driller signed a personal guarantee for me, I had no problem getting the bank to lend me the money I needed. When our son turned 2.5 years old and we sent him to kindergarten, problems began to appear. Lysette started working at the printing shop again, and as she was expected to become the next owner and boss, her mother's nasty influence grew. In good times, Lysette's greedy mother bought large amounts of stock and trusted her broker, as her stock rose during a period when almost everything was increasing in price. However, when times got tough, her broker did a poor job, causing her to suffer significant losses before she could stop it. At the same time, I received some inside information from Nicholas, who was now a lawyer, about a sudden boom in a company. I bought shares and made a big profit. I couldn't resist the temptation to punish Lysette's mother, so I boasted to Lysette that, thanks to a new computer analysis program, I had made a substantial profit and there was more to come. I told her to go to our garage where there was a surprise waiting for her, a nearly new Toyota Yaris that I had bought at a bargain price so that Lysette could use it as a trade-in vehicle. Of course, she told her mother, who was jealous and wanted to find out about my next purchase. I asked Nicholas to find some real stocks and put together a very complex, seemingly nonsensical program in Excel that showed a very good expected return for Mega X stock. I'm sure Lysette looked at my laptop and told her mother, who then made a big investment right before the stock started dropping like a rock. One evening, Lysette asked me, "Did you lose money on Mega X stock?" I replied, "No, I bought some when they were low and sold all when they were high." "Good for us." "Why do you ask?" She responded, "I heard rumors that some people lost a lot of money on them." I said, "Playing on the stock market always involves risk." I won an important battle against her mother, but she suspected my advice was given on purpose. Rumors started circulating in the city that she intended to intensify her efforts to cause trouble for me. Her mother made a bet with her friends that she would convince her daughter to cheat on me, divorce me, and strip me of my property before our boys started school. Therefore, she always invited single young men from her business acquaintances to her parties, hoping one of them would seduce Lysette. Many of them were well-educated, polite, and some were even experienced seducers. Naturally, sooner or later, one of them would end up in her bed. She had a boyfriend when I met her, so why would she be different now, especially after being brainwashed by her mother? Her mother probably still thought that Lysette would have most of my property to invest in the printing plant when I abandoned her after receiving more humiliation than I could bear. Hatred, revenge, and money were strong motives for her mother's dirty play against me. I told Lysette that I knew about the bet and that if her mother found a guy to take her to bed, she would be kicked out immediately. Lysette got angry and screamed, "What the hell do you think of me? Don't you think I know about this damn bet? I'll be furious if anyone tries to do anything." I made it clear, "Good decision. Leave him, and we won't need to discuss this further." When Lysette started working full-time, our family life began to slowly decline. I wanted us to have another child, but Lysette refused. At first, I didn't complain much because Lysette worked hard to help the printing business survive, which her mother, with her old-fashioned ways, could have otherwise jeopardized. My business was doing well, so I asked Lysette to work for me instead of her mother, but she refused. With the rise in oil prices, a thermal heating system became a very good investment, which meant excellent business for me. Although I was very busy, I tried to help Lysette at home as much as possible. Our marriage wasn't great but remained at an acceptable level. Over the years after she returned to work, we still had good moments from time to time. I really tried my best to convince her to quit her poorly paid job and free herself from her mother's bad influence, but things went in the opposite direction. Lysette began taking the baby with her and spent more weekends at her parents' dacha than at home. After a while, I got tired of it, and we had our first real fight. She realized that her mother was putting too much pressure on her and agreed to spend more time at home, but it was a promise soon forgotten. Just 3 months after our big fight, Lysette had returned to her old habits, which meant our social life with friends was reduced to a minimum. I was no longer naive and realized that, after several years of fruitless attempts, her mother had finally succeeded in causing us to distance ourselves from each other. Our son mentioned something about Tommy kissing Mommy when they came home from a weekend at her mother's house. It wasn't a surprise. These things were bound to happen sooner or later, and now I knew for sure that things had hit the fan. I realized that our marriage was close to becoming history despite my best efforts to be a good husband. I was saddened by my failure, but to my great surprise, a feeling of relief began to grow stronger. I could look forward to a future without a nasty mother-in-law who had tried her best to ruin my life in recent years. Lysette, to my growing disappointment, had always preferred to side with her mother, so I didn't care whether she chose her mother in her final decision. However, I felt it was my duty to give her one last fair chance to be a good wife again and save the marriage if that was what she wanted. Lysette got her chance the next Friday evening. As usual, she told me she was sorry but had to go to her mother's house on Saturday morning and would return sometime on Sunday, probably in the evening. I decided it was time for her to make a final choice. Honestly, I didn't care what she did anymore, but I felt sorry for our son and decided to suggest she change her weekend plans to save our marriage. So I replied, "Please don't leave. You were there last weekend. Why don't you stay home so our family can do something together? We can invite our friends over and have a barbecue. It's been a while since we've done that." She answered in surprise, "I promised my mother I'd be there to help her with the invited friends." Her invited friends? Why are they more important to you than our own friends? Or do you have someone special in mind? Who is this Tommy who seems to be spending the weekend with you? Will he be there? She had a surprised and scared look in her eyes for a moment when I mentioned Tommy. She then replied, "He's an old family friend who helps Mom and sometimes me with some EU regulations. He's not my friend, so I don't know if Mom invited him." "How old is he?" "I think he's around 30 and probably a handsome bachelor, I guess." "No, he's married, but his wife left for 3 months to work for the UN in Kosovo. That's why he's free to help his mom on weekends." Her explanation about helping with complex European Union rules sounded reasonable, but why would a man his age want to spend his weekends with such a greedy old woman? "And what's your relationship like with this Tommy guy? You seem to prefer spending your weekends with him rather than with your husband." I noticed the momentary fear in her eyes again before she answered, "Strictly business, of course." "What the hell do you think of me?" "I don't know anymore. You cheated on your boyfriend when we met, so who's to say you won't cheat again? Don't insult me. This was different. I was young and fell in love with you, and you should know that I still love you." "You say that, but let's be clear about where we stand today. Lately, you've been demonstrating very strange behavior. What you call love is nothing to brag about. Our marriage is a parody of a real marriage. You choose to leave your husband and spend the weekend with Tommy, who is clearly suffering from a lack of intimacy while his wife is away. Neither I nor anyone else with any common sense will believe that it's your hateful old mother who craves his attention. But you, Lysette, are a very attractive young woman, and it's not entirely wrong to assume that intimacy with you might be his primary reason for staying in your damned country house. You keep saying you love me, but I don't understand how you think I will believe such nonsense after what you've done to me. I'm completely tired of your damn mother and her dirty tricks with our family. I'm ready to offer you fair terms for a divorce so that you are free to do what you want with your dear Tommy." She wasn't expecting the divorce proposal, and her face turned ashen and gray as she screamed, "Divorce? Are you serious? You can't ask for a divorce just because I want to see my mother. Are you crazy? This is not a reason for divorce." "No, it's not just that, but I don't see any good reason for you to see her from morning to evening, 7 days a week, every week. If your own family still means something to you, please give up Tommy and stay home this weekend so we can talk about our problems and try to find a solution before it's too late. Please do this if you still love me like you say you do." "Of course I love you, but I promised my mother I would come, and I have to do it. I'm sorry, but I can't stay with you. Please be patient with me, and I promise you will be well rewarded. Did you forget that next Friday is the summer solstice? We'll be together all day, and we'll spend a whole week together, 24 hours a day, at the summer house in July. What a gracious offer. At the end of next month, I'll have a whole week with my dear, beloved wife. What a gift from heaven. And may I assume that your concessions to me on the summer solstice are due to circumstances like Tommy's absence during the holidays? Maybe he's going to spend time with his wife and won't have time for you? Or do you still remember that I left Lottie because she left me on the summer solstice?" Now she began to cry. "You're funny. You're pathetic. Do you think it's funny being married to you? I have to say, you have a strange way of showing your love. Well, Lysette, I know I can't stop you from seeing this Tommy because he's more important to you than your family. But you should take the child with you because I'm going to be working on drilling equipment tomorrow and won't be able to look after him." At this, she got really angry and screamed, "You accuse me of cheating. You treat me like a woman of easy virtue. Mother is right, you are a real idiot. Then she started crying loudly. I put an end to this and realized that something was happening between her and Tommy, but I didn't care anymore. There was probably nothing left of our marriage. However, I made one last attempt to save it. The only reason I hadn't left her yet and told her to stay out of our house forever was because I wanted to get a better divorce deal if I caught her cheating. I saw no more point in arguing with Lysette and felt it would be good for me to leave the house for an hour or two. I needed a big whiskey, and since I don't like drinking alone, I went to my favorite pub. It turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. After a drink at the bar, I noticed Mona, a friend of my ex-girlfriend Lottie, sitting in the corner with her husband. I went up to them and asked her how Lottie was doing. She replied, "You didn't know? She's back in town. She divorced Sven and bought a small house here. She moved in about 2 weeks ago. She was asking about you. Why don't you call her and talk to her directly instead of through me?" Mona gave me Lottie's phone number, and I decided to call her right away. Of course, she could have asked me to go somewhere far away and leave her alone, but I thought those who don't take risks don't drink champagne. So I called her. "Hi, I'm Michael, your old ex-boyfriend, if you remember me. Mona told me you were back in town, and I just wanted to say welcome back." Now came the critical moment. How would she react to my call? Much to my delight, she seemed glad to hear from me, and we had a long and pleasant conversation. She even accepted my invitation to lunch on Saturday. Afterwards, I was in a good mood and spent the rest of the evening with Mona and her husband. To my great relief, Lysette pretended to be asleep when I returned home, and I was asleep when she left for her mother's house on Saturday morning. I spent the morning servicing my drilling equipment, and at 1 p.m., I was standing outside the restaurant I had suggested for our lunch, waiting for Lottie. I can't deny that I felt almost the same excitement I did on our first date nearly 8 years ago. When I had waited for 15 minutes and Lottie still didn't arrive, I began to doubt whether she would come at all. But then she showed up. She was still a very attractive woman and now even more feminine than when I saw her several years ago. We had a very pleasant lunch and decided to take a walk in the nearby park afterward. While walking, she suddenly asked, "What is your real reason for wanting to see me again?" "Faith, hope, and love," I answered. She looked embarrassed before asking, "Can I tell you something I've been wanting to say for years?" "Of course, speak up." She admitted, "I made 3 big mistakes in my life. Going to that damn wedding was my first big mistake." "You were right. I was humiliated when the owners tried to set me up with the groom's brother. When the groom asked if I had feelings for his brother, I got angry, told him to go to hell with his brother, and left the party. I didn't invite them to the wedding with Sven, which made them very angry. I thought you would forgive me and take me back when I returned home. But then Let's boyfriend called and said that you had taken away from Lysette what she wanted to save until the wedding night. I still loved you and was so angry that I refused to talk to you when you called. I only contacted Sven to punish you. I was going to leave him and return to you, but then Lysette became pregnant and everything got confused. I admired the way you took care of her, but I cried many nights because of my stupidity in losing you. Then I married Sven, which was my 3rd big mistake. If I hadn't been so stupid, we could have been married instead." I replied, "I, too, made a serious mistake by Lysette on the summer solstice. Of course, you and I broke up, so I was free to do whatever I wanted. But I should have used my common sense and tried to win you back before moving on. Believe me, I've regretted it many times, but it's never too late to try again, or is it?" She was completely surprised. "What did you say?" "Lysette and I have serious problems, serious ones, in fact. I know she's cheating on me, but I don't have proof yet. Last night, before I went to the pub and met Mona, I asked her to stay home this weekend instead of going to her mother's and seeing her lover, but she chose to leave. I decided it was over between us. I was going to divorce her as soon as I got the necessary evidence, or if I couldn't get it, I would file for divorce in any case within a month. Oh God, I thought you were happy together." "We were very happy. You know the old saying, if you can't be with the girl you love, love the one who makes you happy. It worked well for us. Over time, I grew very fond of her, a real, genuine love. But it's over now. What about you? Are you dating anyone? She looked me straight in the eye and said, yes, I met an attractive man online, but we haven't met in real life yet. Our first lunch date is tomorrow, so I'm late for the date. However, I would like to apply to be some kind of substitute for this lucky guy, just in case he doesn't turn out to be your dream prince. What do you say to that? She continued to look me in the eye and was silent for a few seconds before she replied, no, I don't think it's a good decision to have you as some kind of substitute, not at all. Then, noticing the great disappointment in my eyes, she continued, you are my first choice, and if you are serious and promise to be honest with me, I will not need any substitutes and I will cancel my date. It's my lucky day today. Remember, I never cheated on you when we were engaged. You left me, and I was single when I met Lysette. I won't cheat on her until our divorce. But you and I have children almost the same age, and we can start as friends, if you want. I have rented a nice summer house on the coast for the 3rd week of July, and I promise that Lysette and I will be separated by then. Lottie invited me to dinner at her house, and we began planning for the next weeks. Jennifer and I were already friends, and she had no bad feelings about her mother having a friend. I spent the night in Lottie's guest room, and we took a trip to the coast on Sunday. Lysette returned home late on Sunday evening, and we spoke little before going to bed. The next week also passed silently between us. Apparently, she was in a very bad mood after I proposed the divorce. The following Friday was the summer solstice. Lottie and Jennifer spent it with Lottie's parents, while Lysette and I were invited to spend the evening in a neighbor's house, where several families with children of different ages had gathered. We spent most of the day playing with the children, then in the evening, the adults played some fun games and danced. But I hardly spoke to Lysette or danced a single dance with her. Usually, she pretended to be a good, loving wife when we were in public, but this time, neither she nor I cared about everyone seeing the cold feelings between us. On the summer solstice, she went to see her mother but did not stay the night, perhaps because Tommy was not there. Lottie invited me to her parents' house, and I spent several hours there. They wished Lottie and me luck in our new relationship. The week after the summer solstice came and went with cold feelings between Lysette and me. We were polite and civil to each other, but neither of us showed the slightest trace of love. The following weekend, Lysette and our son went with her parents on a 3-day bus trip to Legoland, a famous amusement park for children. After that, she was going on her annual 2-day visit to her cousin. I was delighted to get 4 nights at Lottie's house. In case Lysette intended to fight for a divorce, it would be advantageous to remain on the right side, so we agreed to wait. Lottie, her daughter, and I had a nice time together while Lysette was away. Lottie and I found that we still really enjoyed each other's company, true love indeed. Lysette and I were usually very busy with our jobs in the summer, so we decided to have only 2 weeks of vacation each, and only one of those weeks together in a rented summer house on the coast. Instead of the usual summer vacation, we planned a trip to Thailand for 2 weeks in November. These plans had been made before Tommy came into her life, but under the current circumstances, I had no further intentions of going anywhere with Lysette. Instead, I promised Lottie that I would separate from Lysette before that week, and she agreed to spend it with me in the summer house. I was going to keep my promise. I think Lysette finally realized that the problems in our marriage were much more serious than she had realized and began to try to pretend to be a good wife again. Much to my surprise, she called me all 4 evenings while she was away and told me how much she missed me. She never called me before during all those weekends she spent with her parents. Every time she called, I wanted to talk to our son. During their second day at Legoland, I asked him a few short, simple questions, all of which he answered yes to. One of these questions was, "Is Tommy with you?" And the answer was yes. I don't think any adults noticed. My guess as to the reason for her calls was that she felt remorse for taking Tommy with her. When they got home, I got further evidence from my boy during their one-night stop at home between trips. He asked me if it was true that evil wolves could enter our house and eat him. I asked him who told him such an evil lie. "Grandmother," he replied. "Why did Grandma tell you such a vicious lie? What did you do to her?" "Nothing yet, but we have a secret, and if I tell you about it, the wolves will come and eat me." I tried a trick and asked him, "What's the secret?" "It's not a real secret. Tommy was with you and Mom. Your mom told me that she and Tommy slept in one room, and you and Grandma slept in another. You knew my secret? Yes, I knew, but a secret is a secret. Of course, there are no wolves, but promise me not to tell Mom that we talked about your secret. Lysette allowed her dragon mother to threaten my boy, and she had to pay for it. My next step was to call Nicholas to tell him about my problems and to cancel my appointment. I then spoke to Lottie and my friend Dan, who agreed to help me. I expected that Tommy would not be able to resist the temptation of such pleasure when I was on vacation, so I installed an expensive, small wireless television camera in our bedroom, with a receiver connected to a VCR with a very long tape hidden in the garage. The camera was connected to a motion sensor and could work even in almost complete darkness. I tested it several times with good results, so it was ready. In my Nissan King cab from my drilling company, I kept new locks for the house and cardboard boxes for packing Lysette's belongings when the time came to move her out of my house. After 2 painful days at home, during which Lysette now pretended to be a caring wife, I packed clothes for myself and our boy for a week's vacation, and on Saturday morning, we left as planned. Lysette told me that she was very sorry she had to stay home and work this week and that she would miss us very much. I avoided a kiss goodbye but promised to call her at least once a day. She even stood in the driveway and waved to us as we drove away. I felt sorry because the woman I loved so much had turned into such a lying cheater. But instead of going to Nicholas's summer house, I went to Lottie's garage, where I hid my car. Nicholas and his wife were aware of my problems and agreed to pretend that I was with them but would leave for a moment if Lysette called at 6 o'clock in the evening. Lottie drove past my house but did not notice anything unusual. She made another round at 8 o'clock, and when she returned, she told me that this time she saw a silver metallic Volvo XC90 in my yard. People usually visit friends and relatives in the summer, so none of the neighbors would notice someone else's car in someone's driveway at this time of year. I went in Lottie's car at 11 o'clock, and the Volvo was still there. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I rode there on Lottie's bike, crept into my garage, and turned on the monitor. Bingo, exactly what I wanted to see. Now that I knew I had all the evidence I needed to get a divorce on my terms, I started to feel a little better about this crazy situation. Lysette was not stupid, far from it, so I was a little surprised at how clumsily she handled her infidelity. It was as if she wanted to be caught and made it easier for me to catch her, first by taking Tommy on vacation and then by allowing her evil mother to threaten our son with wolves. Who knows, maybe she wanted to get kicked out so Tommy would have to take care of her. They had a conversation in which Tommy said, "I will miss you so much that every weekend without you will be a terrible pain, even when my wife is home. Why don't we meet at least once a month in the future?" She now sounded a little annoyed and was obviously starting to feel remorse as she replied, "No, Tommy, when you leave after breakfast, our wonderful love story will be history, and I will turn into a good, loyal, loving wife who does everything to win back the love of her husband. But why think about it now? I'm still yours until that time comes. Be a good boy and don't waste another minute of our good time." I pressed a button on my smartphone. My friend Dan woke up after a few beeps, and I told him, "I have bingo. Are you ready for action?" He promised to be here within 15 minutes. I would have been quite strong enough to deal with Tommy in my bed, but the main reason I wanted my friend to be present was so that he could testify that I had not used violence against either Tommy or Lysette if I had gone there alone. I'm sure her mother would have found some lawyer to fabricate a nasty story and sue me for rudeness. Another good reason was that Dan had a very nice video camera and loved using it. He often photographed weddings, and I wanted close-ups that I couldn't get from my own camera. Dan arrived as promised. We gave a short briefing on how to proceed and then quietly entered my house. The master bedroom door was closed. I opened it a few centimeters to make sure they were both sleeping under the covers, very close to each other. As Dan prepared his video equipment, he nodded, and I said, "Let's go." I opened the door, Dan turned on the bright rechargeable halogen light, and began shooting. I walked over to the bed, removed the blanket without waking them, and gave Dan at least 5 seconds to record before yelling, "What the hell is going on here?" They woke up in complete bewilderment. It took them a few seconds to realize what was happening and to adjust to the harsh light. Then Lysette recognized me and started screaming, "No, no, no." I took the camera and told Dan to take Tommy out of my house without giving him a chance to get dressed. Dan took Tommy out, returned after a while, found Tommy's keys in his pants, went out, and threw them in the driveway. Then we heard him drive away. Meanwhile, Lysette stopped screaming and began to cry. I think she realized her game was up because she didn't make any stupid attempts to explain anything. I told her, "You ended our marriage. Get dressed and leave my house. You don't have a car anymore, so Dan will call you a taxi. New locks on the doors will be installed tomorrow. I'll pack your things in cardboard boxes, and you can pick them up tomorrow afternoon." She started screaming at me, "You can't do this. You have no right to do such nasty things to your wife. I will never accept this. I don't care what you accept or not. Please read our prenuptial agreement. You have a copy in your personal safe deposit box. You're leaving this house. Please don't do this to me. Please calm down and let's talk. Of course, we can talk tomorrow. Be here tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to pick up your things and divide everything we have together. Come alone. Remember that your parents are forbidden to set their dirty feet on my property." The taxi arrived, and she had to wait 10 minutes before she was ready to leave. Dan went home to bed, and I called Lottie and told her that I had found Lysette and a man named Tommy in the marital bed, which meant the end of our marriage. But I wanted to stay in the house until I could change the locks. I already had new locks stored in my king cab. I won the battle again, but I could only feel sadness over the broken marriage and how it all ended. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the garage, took the videotape, put it in the VCR, rewound it, and pressed play. The recording showed Lysette dressed to kill in a black top, a short black skirt, her hair well styled, laughing and leading Tommy into our bedroom. She was best than I had seen her in years. In the bedroom, she couldn't help but brag about how much we paid for our new marriage bed and told him to be careful not to get it dirty. She said, "I hope it was worth the wait because, like I told you before, I promised you I would only do this once and then never again." I was still too agitated to sleep, so I started removing Lysette's clothes from the closets and drawers and folding them in the living room. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Lottie and the children arrived at my house with breakfast in a basket. When I checked Tommy's wallet, I found his wife's phone number in it. I called her and told her that I had found Tommy and my wife without anything in my bed and had videotaped it. She got really angry but asked me to email her the photos, which I did after editing a copy of the video to show Lysette if she had any objections to my terms. I changed the locks, carefully packed Lysette's things, and labeled the contents of each box. I didn't want to take revenge by damaging or destroying anything of hers. I then took my chainsaw and sawed our almost new and very expensive marriage bed into small pieces, which I then threw out in the driveway. Lottie and the kids even brought me lunch, which allowed me to take a break from work. At 4 o'clock, a pale Lysette arrived alone in the printer's old Ford Transit. She looked at the pile that was our dear bed for a long time before she entered. I had coffee ready in the living room and asked her to sit down. She agreed, sat down, and began to sob, giving me a long litany about how she still loved me and how she regretted her terrible mistake and how she would never do it again if only I could forgive her. She promised to work less at the printing plant, spend all weekends with her family, never go to parties or dinners at her mother's without me, and wanted us to have another child. I told her, 3 weeks ago, you could have saved our marriage with those promises, but today, after everything you've done since then, it's too late. I'm sorry, Lysette, but we no longer have a future together. She began her litany again. I let her talk, and when she finished, I asked, "You must think I'm a complete idiot if you thought I'd believe your lies about Tommy. A 30-year-old man who spends his weekends in the company of a disgusting old woman like your mother, even if I were thinking with my fifth place and not my head, I should have realized that there was a much younger and more beautiful woman out there who wanted to be seduced by him." She didn't answer, so I continued, "You're a very attractive woman, Lysette, so I can't blame him. But I blame you for being such a cheap woman that you let him end our marriage and make our child very unhappy. Why, Lysette? Why was I such a bad husband that you had to cheat with that idiot? You were not my first or best choice, but I married you when you needed me and even fell in love with you. I have been a faithful husband to you until this moment." She sobbed, "It's not your fault. I never stopped loving you. You're my one true love, but I know you've slept with many other women, and I've had no experience with other men except you. I'm sorry that I couldn't resist the temptation to be with at least one other man, and I promise I won't do it again. I replied, "Now that you got what you wanted, I hope you're happy. At least your mother is probably very happy. She got what she wanted all along. Please tell her that I don't care. What you did gave me the freedom to marry the woman who truly loves me. You didn't realize that you ended our marriage that Friday before the summer solstice when I begged you to spend the weekend with your family, but you chose to leave and sleep with Tommy at your mother's. Did you really think I would accept this? Being deceived by my wife. The only reason I didn't throw you out of the house right away was that I wanted proof of your cheating so I could get rid of you without paying you anything. Remember, I even offered you a divorce on fair terms, but to my surprise, you refused. An intelligent woman like you should have realized that I would never accept being a poor, deceived husband for a cheating wife. I didn't want a divorce then, and I don't want it now because I love you. Of course, I understood that the child told you something about Tommy, and you suspected something, but I never thought you would have evidence. I regretted the affair and promised myself that Tommy would be my first and last betrayal, but I decided to complete it as Tommy and I had planned. The night with him in our house was supposed to be the grand finale, the last betrayal. I'm glad it's over, and I can't deny that your behavior after that Friday made me worry about the problems I created in our marriage. I started to fear the worst when you treated me poorly and refused to have intimacy with me. So I wanted to be a good wife again and do everything possible to win back your love, really pamper you during our week at the summer house, and try to get pregnant as soon as possible. I was even looking for a new job. I'm afraid it's too late now. I replied, "You're right. Friday before midsummer was your last chance. You didn't care about me then, and now, after what happened last night, there is only one possible solution to our problems." I handed her the divorce papers and said, "Please sign them so we can do this the easy way." "What do you mean?" "No matter what you choose, the easy way or the hard way, everything will be according to the terms of our prenuptial agreement. You have a copy in your personal safe deposit box. You get everything that's yours, and I take what's mine, which means almost everything except your clothes. I want custody of our son, but you can see him often when you have your own place. However, I will not allow you to take him to your mother's house or her place." She did not object to this because her relationship with her mother had deteriorated, and she had quit her job at the printing house. Her mother went ballistic when Lysette demanded her salary, refused to pay her anything, and completely lost her temper when Lysette sued her. Lysette won the case, and she managed to receive her money 2 weeks before the printing house went bankrupt. The bank objected, but Nicholas provided her with a good lawyer who convinced the bank to withdraw its claims. Tommy's visit to my house to celebrate his romance with Lysette lasted only a short, intense, and initially pleasant time, which soon turned into a terrible nightmare for him. After I found him in my bed and he drove away without anything from my house in his Volvo, he was stopped by the traffic police who were checking drivers for alcohol on the way home from parties. Lysette and he celebrated the end of their love story with a nice dinner with my best Rioja wine and cognac. He was detained without anything at the police station for a blood sample to be taken. One of Lysette's friends later told me that he had received heavy fines and lost his driver's license for 2 years. His wife did what she promised. She returned home, left him, and filed for divorce. She now works in Geneva, Switzerland, for the company where she lives with an Italian colleague whom she met while working in Kosovo. Tommy tried to solve his personal problems with the help of alcohol, which forced him to take time off from work. Good intimacy doesn't always lead to happiness. He never saw Lysette again and refused to take her numerous calls during her desperate attempts to reach him. Before they were intimate, he had promised to take care of her if she had problems in her marriage. Now, she learned the cruel truth. All his words were just empty chatter, and she was naive for believing everything he said. The extra money from the printing house gave her the opportunity to buy an apartment in a good area, and she had no trouble finding a new job. Although we work well together on child-related issues, we never discuss personal topics. Lysette is a very attractive woman, and now that she is free from her mother's influence, it is unclear why she has not started dating yet. LTI and I got married right after my divorce was finalized. We sold both of our old houses and bought one together. She's pregnant now, and I think these days we're a pretty typical family of our times, with 3 kids each from different parents. We don't care because we are a happy family. The birthday card was Dan's idea. I accepted it, and he asked his mother to buy a beautiful card on which she wrote in neat handwriting, "Dear friends, I must congratulate you on your victory in the BT. You've done what every parent dreams of, convincing your only daughter to leave her good, loving husband to become the mistress of a married cheater. She should be very grateful to you for the rest of her life. Your faithful friend. I sent it to Lysette's father, who, according to rumors around town, had objected to Tommy coming to their house every weekend to seduce Lysette, but his wife convinced him otherwise. He felt both sadness and anger while Lysette cried for hours after I kicked her out. The card was the last straw, and he finally realized that if he had acted like a man, he could have stopped his wife's madness. He regretted that he had been such a coward and had become a laughingstock among his friends. After a few drinks, he found the strength to express his humble opinion to his wife. Their argument ended in a fight that sent her to the hospital for a week and him to the police station for the night. The day before she left the hospital, he packed his bags and left home. Since they had no minor children, their divorce was finalized within 3 months. This story is a reminder of how destructive secrets and betrayals can be in relationships. Sometimes the best thing to do is to put the past behind us, despite the pain and disappointment, and open the door to a new life where there is room for honesty and true love. In the end, everyone deserves happiness and respect, and the lessons from the past help us become stronger and wiser along the way. Thanks for staying with us. See you in the future.